Welcome to the Audacity to Podcast, episode 75. 5 reasons bloggers and podcasters must have Audacity. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of the Audacity Podcast. I'm Daniel J. Lewis, and this is the how-to podcast about podcasting and using Audacity. It's where I give you the guts and teach you the tools to podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. And today, I'm pulling a little bit of an April Fool's on you. I'm not going to talk about special effects or do crazy things with my webcam or anything like that, but I am talking about Audacity today. But not the kind of Audacity you would think. Instead, I'm talking about the quality of Audacity, not the software program. Because every blogger and podcaster must have Audacity, the quality. Merriam Webster defines Audacity as the quality or state of being audacious, as intrepid boldness, or bold or arrogant disregard of normal restraints. Also, an audacious act. And then audacious is defined as intrepidly daring, adventurous, recklessly bold, rash, contemptuous of law, religion, decorum, insolent, marked by originality and verve. That's what we're talking about today, is actual, true Audacity. And you must have this to be an effective blogger or podcaster. And I've got 5 reasons to share with you why that is. We could come up with a whole lot more reasons, or we could mix these together in many different ways. But here are 5 reasons why you must have Audacity for podcasting and blogging. Number 1, you're not just the audience anymore. We've been used to watching TV or movies or listening to the radio, reading books, reading the newspaper, magazines, all of this stuff, consuming things as the audience. But you're not just the audience anymore. You can be so much more than just a person out there consuming content. You can be the one that is generating content. Everyone can teach something, and everyone has something that they can share, a message, something that's important to them. And you don't have to be the audience anymore. You are not just the audience anymore. You can be the one reaching out to an audience. You can be the one finding or creating an audience for that topic that you have, that passion you have. It's not just consuming anymore. This is why it takes boldness, because if you are just sitting by and not being bold, not being audacious about your podcasting and blogging, then you might end up just being a consumer. It requires boldness to be that person out there making a new audience, because you're not just part of the audience anymore. Number 2, your perspective and experience matter. There's a lot of knowledge out there on many topics, and there's a ton of knowledge out there on individual topics from so many different people. Even if the knowledge is already out there, you know what isn't out there? Your perspective and your experience. And your perspective and experience do matter. Your perspective is formed by your experience. And others haven't had the exact same life as you've had. They haven't had all of those same experiences to form the perspective that you have. So you have a unique perspective. That's not out there already. Someone else might have something similar, but not your exact same perspective. So it requires boldness and audaciousness and audacity to get out there and share your message, share your perspective and experience. Even if someone is already there saying the same thing, it's like when you have a conversation with friends and you're both talking about the same thing. Do you just let them do all the talking because you feel like, oh, they're saying everything that needs to be said? I don't need to participate in this conversation that I am totally enthusiastic about, but they're saying what needs to be said. So I'll just leave it. No, you want to participate, even if you're just saying the same thing they said, but in your own words. You are excited about the message, and your perspective brings a different angle to the topic. So your perspective and experience do matter. Don't feel like they don't matter out there. Don't sit at home thinking, well, I'd like to talk about this, but I don't really think anyone would listen to me. I don't think anyone would care about what I have to say about this, when there are people like Larry King, or there's a big company like CNN or Fox or CNET or Twit, This Week in Tech, or any of these really big groups addressing certain topics. You might feel like they've got it covered. No one out there really wants to listen to me. I have to say this politely, you're wrong. People will listen to you. They will appreciate your perspective, because those big names don't have your perspective. They don't have your experience. So when you present, don't try to be like those other people, because it won't work if you're trying to fit your perspective onto someone else's personality. It's your personality, your perspective, so it's yours to share. Be excited about that, because you can be completely unique, which that's redundant to say that, completely unique. You can be unique. So get bold about sharing that. Number 3, you can make your own rules. Podcasting is really open, and blogging as well, to different rules. It doesn't have to follow the rules of big media out there. It can be what you want it to be. You can have a co-host, or you can be solo. You can make your podcast episodes 3 hours long. You could make them an hour long. You could do it weekly, monthly, daily, every other day, or some kind of odd weekly schedule. You can do whatever you want with podcasting. You can talk about one topic. You can give it a different perspective later. You can reapproach that topic again later in the future. You can say the exact same thing again in the future if you want to. There aren't any hard set rules that you have to follow. Yes, there are some general guidelines on things, and we've talked about that many times before here on the Audacity podcast. Stuff that you could follow that will help you be more effective, but you don't have to follow them. And more importantly, these general rules that the big media places have to follow, like you must have a commercial break after so many minutes, or the commercial break must be so long, or you must get in so many calls, or you must take live calls, or you must mention this sponsor, all of that stuff. You have those choices yourself. So you could be on your own or have a co-host. You could go hours or minutes or whatever. You could have sponsors. You could not have sponsors. It's up to you. You don't have to force a sponsorship on your show if you don't want a sponsorship. You could make it a single topic show, or you could cover many different topics. You could be very focused on a particular niche. You could be very broad and opinionated. It can follow your own rules. And that's exciting about it, because you might look at podcasters out there or big media out there, and you think that, well, it has to be an hour long and it needs commercial breaks and it needs to come in seasons. Or you might even think, well, I need to podcast every single week, or my podcast needs to cover 5 points in every episode, or whatever. Make your own rules. If you want to make those rules like that, you can. But this is totally up to you. And this can give you that audacity in podcasting, is because you get to make your own rules. So number 1, you're not just the audience anymore. Number 2, your perspective and experience matter. Number 3, you can make your own rules. Number 4, you can change the world from your basement. That's really cool. And it's really true, though. Because, I say basement kind of loosely. It might be a different level on your house, of course. But you have the power to be a thought leader without having to invest millions of dollars, without having to have a radio studio, without having to be someone famous. You could become someone famous just from your basement. There are a lot of really famous podcasters out there who do things from their basement or from just a bedroom in their house or their closet. They put their recording equipment in their closet for sound reasons, or in their car, or different things like that. You can do that. You can make your own rules that way, but you can change the world. Don't feel like, well, if I put this podcast out there, no one's going to listen. No one's going to pay attention. It's not going to make much of a difference. Lies, 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 lies. Those are all lies. You can make a difference with your podcast or with your blog. You can change people's lives. Just think about, let's pick a topic. Maybe your topic is smoothies. I have no idea where that came from in my mind, but your topic is smoothies. So you're going to have the smoothie podcast and talk about different smoothie recipes, different techniques for making smoothies, why smoothies are healthy, what blenders are great for smoothies, and all of these different perspectives of smoothies. And that's probably some special niche that no one's covering. But you can change the world with that niche. There might be someone out there that is trying to lose weight or trying to get healthy, and they just can't figure out why. They've heard this thing about, oh, you should try smoothies. Smoothies can really help. And they just can't figure out why or how to do it. You could be the one to help them. You could help someone change their life with a smoothie. That could be your slogan there. But if someone, let's take a very practical example. Someone maybe is so discouraged that they can't lose weight. They've heard this thing about maybe trying smoothies out. And I know I could be way off base here on this example. But they want to try making smoothies to help them lose weight. And that's something that you talk about in your podcast. So this person then gets healthier, not just loses weight, but also gets healthier in their diet, eats more nutritional foods. They get sick less often because they're having and enjoying these very nutritious smoothies that you talk about making. So there's a person that has turned from possible discouragement to excitement for each new day because of smoothies. You can change lives like that. Or on the bigger scale of things, you could have a huge influence on a particular topic by becoming a thought leader in that topic. If you have the smoothie podcast, then it could be that these big companies that make smoothie machines will say, ooh, this person is talking about smoothies. They have this audience that's really interested about smoothies. Let's get this person to interview our people or to review our products. Or let's send them a free product and see what they think of this and if they'd like to host a giveaway with their audience. All about smoothies. Totally possible. I just pulled smoothie out of the air. But pick your topic. You can be a thought leader in that topic from your basement. It doesn't take millions of dollars. I've talked several times before. I think it was episode 3 or 4, the bare minimums of podcasting. If you have a computer, you can podcast. If you have a smartphone and not a computer, you could still podcast, especially with things like the iPad and GarageBand on the iPad or iPhone or iPod Touch or similar apps on Android. You could podcast without even a computer. Just edit it, upload it, post it, and you're podcasted. You don't have to have all of this fancy equipment. You can just be doing it from your basement and change the world. It takes boldness to do that, though, because you have to be consistent and you can't give up. If you give up, if you keep that basement mentality, then you're not going to succeed. You need to be bold. Picture your basement instead. The door to your basement is not a door to a hole in the ground. It is the door to the world because your message reaches out to the World Wide Web, which is, worldwide. I recently realized our international impact for our podcast about Once Upon a Time. That we started this podcast, and I never really thought about the international audience it would have, but a lot of people in other countries watch the TV show Once Upon a Time, and so they participate in our forums, and they participate in our live shows and chat rooms and send feedback and all of this. from all over the world. I had no idea the international appeal that something like that would happen. So when we podcast about a TV show, we are reaching an international audience. It also means I need to consider things like including GMT times instead of just Eastern time and thinking all US based, but thinking internationally based and making sure that we're friendly and accessible to international listeners. So your basement isn't just a hole in the ground. It is the world. If you have the boldness, the audacity to treat it as such. So you are not just the audience anymore. Your perspective and experience matter. You can make your own rules. You can change the world from your basement. And number 5, you are not alone. It's very easy to think that, well, I can't find anyone else who's interested in talking about this topic. And you might see that if you go to a party and you want to talk to people about smoothies. Then you talk to this person and you can just tell their eyes are glazing over. They're just saying, really? Well, it was nice talking to you. Really, they mean it was nice listening to you. Now go away. But with an international audience, you're not alone. Someone else out there probably enjoys talking about the same thing you enjoy talking about. Someone else out there is probably also looking for someone to talk about your special niche topic. There are websites and forums about almost everything out there, or people from all walks of life talking about different things. You just have to find them, and it takes some boldness to do that because you need to reach out to these communities. You can't just be passively sitting by waiting for them. The idea of Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come, does not apply outside of the movie Field of Dreams. If you start a website, you can't just expect people are going to come to your website or find you. You have to go out and find them, reach out to them, and give them your message and tell them, hey, I want to talk about this. I see you're talking about this. Can I talk about this with you? Or start that conversation with others. Find someone else's blogs that writes about the topic you're interested in. Start commenting on their blog. Participate in the conversation. You'll quickly find you are not alone. Just because there isn't another podcast about the topic doesn't mean that you're alone. Even if you can't find a blog or a podcast, which, by the way, you'll probably find a blog about everything out there, but even if you can't find a blog about your topic, still, you're not alone. Whatever that niche topic is, someone else out there is also looking for that topic and looking to participate in that conversation. So you need to be bold in going out there and believing that you can start this conversation. You can find people to have these conversations over your topic. So be bold. Just like the definition, intrepidly daring, recklessly bold, rash, marked by originality and verve. Those are definitions for audacious. You need to be audacious in your podcasting and blogging and find those people. So number 1, you're not just the audience anymore. You can be a thought leader, a content producer, all of these fancy buzzwords. In other words, meaning you can make your own audience. You can find people who will listen to you because, number 2, your perspective and experience matter. You're not alone, but you are unique. So even if the knowledge is already out there, your experience gives you a unique perspective, and that perspective is worth sharing. Number 3, you can make your own rules. You don't have to follow the rules that you see others have or that others make for themselves. You can make your own rules. Number 4, you can change the world from your basement. Just remember, your basement isn't a hole in the ground. It is access to the entire world as you're podcasting and blogging. Number 5, You are not alone. Someone else out there is already looking for the conversation. You need to find them, connect with them, and continue this conversation boldly. So these are the 5 reasons that you must have Audacity in your podcasting and in your blogging, regardless of what software you use. But it is something that you need to have the guts to podcast. That's why I say in my tagline, giving you the guts and teaching you the tools to podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. Because it's not just about the tools. Sometimes we need reminders to have the guts to do this stuff. Just giving someone a hammer and telling them build a house might not work, because the person will feel like, well, I don't know that I can build a house. That's where you have to give them the guts and say, look, here are the tools. Here's how you do it. You can do this. You can build this house. Now get to it. You too can build an empire, a community, a network, connections, relationships around the topics that you are the most passionate about. And the word passion is really a buzzword in podcasting, but that's because it so well describes what we do, that we talk about these interests, and these are things that we are passionate about. So we kind of can't get away from the word passion, even though you might be sick of hearing that word passion. But keep these things in mind. You're not just the audience anymore. Your perspective and experience matter. You can make your own rules. You can change the world from your basement, and you are not alone. Let me apply this in a practical and personal way by telling you about my journey a little bit. I started the Audacity to podcast, even though there were other podcasts about podcasting. Well, primarily two that were consistent at that time. There was Cliff Ravenscraft with Podcast Answer Man and David Jackson with School of Podcasting. Both excellent podcasts about podcasting, and both very knowledgeable men, have a lot of experience with a lot of things that I don't have experience with. So definitely be listening to them too if you want to learn about podcasting. And then since then, there have been others like Ray Ortega with School of Podcasting and Podcasters Emporium, which I think is on hiatus. I'm not sure. And there have been some others who have come and gone. But when you look at this world of podcasting, there are plenty of people talking about how to podcast, plenty of books and guides and blogs and all of this stuff. I felt like I didn't want to be that audience anymore, because I was talking back to things. I would hear someone say something, and it might be about Audacity or about lame MP3 encoder or about something else. And I would be talking back to my iPod as I'm listening to the podcast saying, no, that's not right. Or, wait, you forgot about this. Or, oh, it's not just all Mac people, or it's not just all Windows people, or Windows isn't all that bad, or Mac, all of this stuff. I was talking back, and I felt like I have a perspective here, and no one else is talking about this. And even more practically than that, that's not exactly what I thought, but what I thought was, I want to share my perspective. So that's why I launched the Audacity podcast in June of 2009, because I had something to share. I didn't want to be just the audience anymore. I wanted to step into this field boldly because I believed that my perspective mattered, that there were other people out there who didn't have the vast experience with hardware equipment like Ray and Cliff and David do. But also, I felt like there were people who want to stick with Audacity, who might not have as much money for podcasting, or who want a little bit more in-depth information, some more how-to kind of stuff. So I felt like, and I believed that my perspective mattered. And it's not just like a prideful thing. And I hope that you don't feel like you're being prideful by realizing that your perspective matters. But I realized that I want to share this. It's important to me. Maybe someone else will appreciate it. And I made my own rules. I decided that there were certain things that I would or wouldn't do in podcasting, certain things and ways that I would podcast. Like I decided that I would try to podcast weekly, which I've been doing consistently, mostly, with few exceptions. And I decided that all of my podcasts in the Noodle Mix Network would be clean podcasts, no foul language or no explicit content allowed. These are my rules. They might not be the same as yours. And then what I'm also seeing is how I am changing the world. And it's kind of a humbling thing, really, to realize that here I just started a podcast because there were things that I wanted to say that I felt like weren't being said. I didn't start it with this goal of, I want to leave my job. I want to become a freelance web designer. I want to have this podcast network. I want to be one of the number one podcasts for Once Upon a Time or any of this stuff. I just decided this is stuff I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about it. So I started these podcasts. And now I have opportunities like I'll be speaking on the Podcasting 101 panel at Blog World in New York City. That is a huge honor to me. And I can't believe that I'm getting to have that opportunity to be at a conference like that. And also I get these emails from many people who have said things like, man, I just could not figure out this problem with my podcast or with my website. And then you mentioned such and such, and now it makes total sense. And now I fix this problem. Now I can keep podcasting or blogging. So I love hearing those things and seeing how others are able to also change the world. And then I realized I'm not alone in this. There are other people out there who enjoy some of these things. Like I have my clean comedy podcast, and this is a good reminder for me because sometimes I struggle with that podcast. Honestly, sometimes I struggle coming up with clean comedy. Not the clean aspect, but the comedy aspect of it. Because I just feel like there's not much to talk about. But when I look at how many people we have listening, and it's not a huge number, I'll tell you, it is not huge at all. But when I look at how many people are listening, I'm realizing I have to remind myself, these people are coming back. They enjoy clean comedy as well. They enjoy these stories that they tell. They can relate to these life situations that we've been in, or they can relate to us and our personalities and our embarrassing moments, or they've had embarrassing moments of their own that they'd love to share and have people laugh with them and at these things, or they have jokes. They enjoy humor too. So when I get discouraged sometimes with the ramen noodle, it is those moments that I feel like, oh, all alone in this. I can't think of anything to talk about. But I'm not alone. And you're not alone either in your topic. So remember that you are not just the audience anymore. Your perspective and experience matters. You can make your own rules. You can change the world from your basement, and you are not alone. Let this be kind of a battle cry to you as podcasters. Get out there. Grab your audacity, not the program, but your boldness, your intrepid daringness to do something that no one else is doing, or do something better than other people are doing, or make personal connections like big media isn't trying to make. All of these things that you can do because you have the boldness to do it. You have the audacity to podcast. TM, trademark. You want to do these things because you want to do these things. It's about your boldness. It's about your guts. And it will pay off in many different ways. Financially, maybe in relationships, maybe in just joy of getting to do something you really enjoy doing. Whether you do this as a hobby or as a profession, you have to have boldness and the audacity to do these things. And don't give up. Because when you give up, then that means your audacity has already left you. You're no longer bold when you give up. So don't give up. Stay in the course. Stay on the fight, if you want to call it that. But keep going, and your passions will change, yes, and that's fine. Then that's why you don't have to follow your own rules. I mean, you don't have to make... Let me try that again. You can make your own rules. So if your passions change, there is nothing that says, oh, you absolutely must stick with this 3-year contract and talk about this thing that you're no longer passionate about for at least 200 episodes over the next 5 years. You don't have to do something like that. You can make your own rules and decide, that's it. I'm done talking about this. I'm going to talk about something else now. So you must have Audacity in podcasting or blogging. I'd love to hear from you what you think about this and what are some of the things that inspire you toward boldness in podcasting. Please leave a comment on the show notes over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/75, and you can see the show notes there for this episode and also comment there. And I'd love to hear your feedback either on this or suggestions or questions for future episodes. You can call 903-231-2221 or email feedback@theaudacitytopodcast.com or go to theaudacitytopodcast.com and click the send a voice message button. And then that way you can send an audio message right from your computer without having to do anything fancy for it. You can also email your audio messages, as several people have done, over to feedback@theaudacitytopodcast.com. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe. That way you'll receive these episodes automatically. You can do so, and also if you are subscribed, maybe leave a rating and review on iTunes. You can do that over at theaudacitytopodcast.com. And there's so much more there, so many other episodes that I've talked about. So check it out, everything over at theaudacitytopodcast.com. If you're going to go to Blog World or thinking about going to Blog World, please use my affiliate link, theaudacitytopodcast.com/blogworld, and use my friend's promo code to save 10%. That code is GSPN10. Thanks to Cliff Ravenscraft for allowing me to use that as well. So go to theaudacitytopodcast.com/blogworld and use promo code GSPN10, that's 10, to save 10% for your Blog World registration. And I hope to see you there. Please follow me on Twitter at The Ramen Noodle, and check out the show notes for this episode at theaudacitytopodcast.com/75. And I'd love to hear from you and start a conversation over there. Now that I've given you some of the guts and taught you some of the tools, it's time for you to go podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. I'm Daniel J. Lewis. Thank you so much for listening. The Audacity to Podcast is a proud member of the Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our podcasts over at noodle.mx. And the Audacity to Podcast is also a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Find more at techpodcasts.com.